The cold was a physical thing. It wasn't just a lack of warmth. It was an active, malicious presence that worked its way through the cheap fabric of my coat, past my thin scrubs, and deep into my bones. It was the kind of Chicago in February. Cold that made you question every decision you'd ever made that led you to this exact spot, at this exact moment. For me, that spot was a bus stop on a windswept corner, and the moment was 8:47 p.m. 40 minutes after my shift had ended and 20 minutes after my bus was supposed to arrive. My name is Sarah, and I'm a nurse. Or at least, I was trying to be. I had the degree, the license, and the student loan debt to prove it. I had a job at Jude's General, working on the general medical floor, which was a nice way of saying we got a little bit of everything. And every day, I felt like I was failing at all of it. That day had been particularly brutal. A 12-hour shift that felt like 20. We were short-staffed as usual. I'd spent most of the day with an elderly man named Mr. Henderson, who was confused and scared and kept pulling out his four. He'd look at me with these panicked, cloudy eyes and ask for his wife, Eleanor, who, his chart told me, had passed away 3 years ago. Each time, I'd have to gently redirect him, my heart breaking a little more. It's hard to watch someone's world crumble over and over again, and all you can offer is a soft voice and a fresh 4-line. By the time I clocked out, my feet were throbbing, my back was a single, solid knot of pain, and my emotional energy was completely gone. All I wanted was to get to my tiny, overpriced apartment, eat a bowl of cereal for dinner, and fall into bed, but my car, a 1998 Toyota Corolla I'd lovingly named the Old Tin Can, had other plans. It had made a series of terrifying clunking noises on the way to work that morning, and a puff of black smoke from the exhaust had been the final farewell. I'd had to call a tow truck from the hospital parking lot. The mechanic's diagnosis over the phone was grim. "Engine's shot, kid. You're looking at a few thousand to fix it." Honestly, it's not worth it. A few $1,000s. He might as well have said $1 million. After rent, utilities, my own student loan payments, and the money I sent home to help with my mom's medical bills, I usually had about $50 left for groceries for the week. A car repair of that size was an impossibility. So, the bus it was, which brought me here, shivering so hard my teeth chattered in a painful rhythm against each other. The digital sign at the bus stop was frozen, literally and figuratively, on a nonsensical jumble of letters. My phone was at 4% battery, so I couldn't even lose myself in scrolling. I was just there, alone with the biting wind and the growing sense of despair. I pulled my thin coat tighter. A useless gesture. I'd bought it at a thrift store. It was more for style than for a real Midwestern winter. I couldn't afford a proper down-filled parka. That was a luxury item. Everything felt like a luxury item these days. My thoughts started to spiral, as they often did when I was tired and stressed. Was this it? Was this my life now? A never-ending cycle of exhaustion and debt? I became a nurse to help people, to make a difference, inspired by the nurses who had cared for my own mom during her first battle with cancer. They had been angels of mercy, calm and competent and kind. I wanted to be like them, but I didn't feel like an angel. I felt like a failure, ground down by a system that demanded everything and gave back just enough to keep you from completely giving up. Tears started to well in my eyes, hot at first, then freezing on my lashes. I wasn't just crying from the cold anymore. I was crying for the car I couldn't fix, for the patients I couldn't save from their own minds, for the mom I couldn't afford to visit as often as I wanted. I felt a sob building in my chest. A raw, ugly thing. That's when a car pulled up. It wasn't a taxi. It was a black, sleek sedan, an Audi or a Mercedes, the kind of car you see in movies, not parked on a grimy side street next to a bus stop. It slowed, and the passenger side window glided down with a soft, expensive-sounding hum. My first instinct was fear. I was a woman alone at night. I instinctively took a step back, clutching my worn-out tote bag to my chest like a shield. Inside the car, a man leaned over. He looked to be in his late 50s, maybe early 60s. He had graying hair, neatly styled, and a face that was lined with what looked like a combination of stress and wisdom. He wasn't wearing a flashy suit, just a simple old dark wool coat over a sweater. But it was the kind of coat that you could just tell was warm. "Excuse me, miss," he said. His voice was calm and deep, not threatening at all. "Are you all right?" I just stared, my mind struggling to form a response. "I'm fine," I mumbled, the words coming out in a puff of white air. It was the standard automatic reply. He didn't seem convinced. His eyes, which were a surprisingly kind shade of blue, scanned my face, then my thin coat, then my posture, hunched against the wind. "You look like you're freezing to death," he said, stating the obvious. "The bus isn't coming, is it?" I shook my head, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. "I saw your scrubs," he continued, nodding toward the bit of green fabric peeking out from under my coat collar. "You work at Steedy Jude's, right? I just came from there." This little detail somehow disarmed me. He wasn't just a random stranger. He had a connection, however small, to my world. "Yes," I finally managed to say, my voice raspy. "It's a brutal night to be waiting out here," he said. He paused for a moment, as if weighing his next words. "Look, I know this is forward, and please, feel free to say no, but I can't in good conscience drive away and leave you here. Can I give you a ride home? I promise I'm just a boring old man who doesn't want to see a nurse get frostbite." My mind raced. Every warning bell my mother had ever instilled in me was ringing. Don't get in cars with strangers. But then I looked at his face again. There was a genuine concern there, a tiredness that mirrored my own. And the cold was winning. My fingers and toes were past numb and had started to ache with a deep, searing pain. Another 10 minutes out here and I might actually be in trouble. I don't live far," I stammered. A compromise my panicked brain offered up. "Doesn't matter if it's 1 block or 10 miles, he said gently. "Get in, please. The heat is on." The mention of heat was the final push I needed. I fumbled with the door handle, my fingers too stiff to work properly. He leaned over and pushed the door open from the inside. The moment I slid onto the plush leather seat, a wave of glorious, blissful warmth enveloped me. It was so intense, so welcome, that I almost started crying again, this time from sheer relief. "Thank you," I whispered, pulling the heavy door shut and cutting off the relentless howl of the wind. The silence inside the car was as comforting as the heat. "Of course," he said, pulling smoothly away from the curb. "Where to?" I gave him my address, my voice still shaky. As he drove, I sat there, soaking in the warmth, my body slowly, painfully, starting to thaw. The feeling of pins and needles in my hands and feet was excruciating, but it was a sign of life returning. We drove in silence for a few blocks. I was acutely aware of how out of place I must have looked in this luxurious car, with my cheap, damp coat and my worn-out nursing shoes. I was an imposter in this world of quiet comfort. He seemed to sense my awkwardness. He didn't turn on the radio. He just drove, his gaze focused on the road. Then, he spoke again, his voice soft, tough. "Day at the hospital?" It was a simple question, but it broke the dam. The stress and sadness of the day, of the whole month, of the whole year, came pouring out of me. "The toughest," I said, and my voice cracked. We were so short-staffed, and I had this one patient, a sweet old man. He kept asking for his wife, and she's gone. And I just had to stand there and, I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like I'm not helping anyone. I hadn't meant to say all that. It just tumbled out, unedited and raw. I clamped my mouth shut, mortified that I was unloading all my problems onto this kind stranger. "I'm so sorry," I said quickly. "You don't need to hear all this." He just shook his head slightly. "Don't be sorry," he said. "Being a nurse is one of the hardest jobs in the world. My wife, she was a nurse." I looked over at him. There was a shadow in his eyes now, a deep-seated sadness. "She worked in oncology for 30 years, he continued, his voice growing quieter. "She used to come home with stories like yours. Some days, she'd be so full of light because a patient went into remission. Other days she would just sit in the dark and cry because she'd lost one. She absorbed so much of her patient's pain. She called it the cost of caring. The cost of caring. The phrase hit me right in the chest. That's exactly what it felt like. A tax on your soul. She sounds incredible, I said softly. She was. He said, a faint, sad smile touching his lips. Her name was Eleanor. She passed away 2 years ago. The nurses who cared for her at the end, they were just like her. Just like you. They worked too hard, cared too much, and probably didn't get paid enough for the miracles they performed every day. We had stopped at a red light, and he turned to look at me directly. His gaze was intense, but not in a scary way. It was like he was truly seeing me, not just a freezing girl at a bus stop, but a person with a story, with struggles. And then he said the words that weren't flashy or dramatic, but that landed with the weight of a lifeline thrown to a drowning person. You look like you carry the weight of the world on your shoulders, he said, his voice thick with empathy. And I don't think it's just from one bad day. What's really going on? No one had ever asked me that. Not really. My mom would ask, but I'd always say I was fine because I didn't want to worry her. My friends were all struggling with their own problems. Co-workers were too busy. People see the uniform, the competent professional, and they don't see the person crumbling underneath. But this man, this stranger, he saw it. And in the warm, safe cocoon of his car, I finally let myself be seen. The story of my life spilled out. The student loans that felt like a mountain I could never climb. My mom's illness and the medical debt that had crippled our family. My dream of going back to school for a pediatric oncology specialty. A dream that seemed more impossible every day. And finally, the story of my poor, broken-down car. The final straw that had left me feeling so utterly hopeless. I talked, and he just listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't offer cheap platitudes like it will all work out. He just nodded, his expression full of a deep, quiet understanding. When I finally finished, my voice hoarse and my cheeks wet with tears, I hadn't even realized I was crying. I felt lighter, as if I'd just set down a bag I'd been carrying for years. We pulled up in front of my shabby apartment building. The end of the line. Thank you, I said, my voice thick with emotion, for the ride, and for listening. I don't know why I told you all that, because you needed to, he said simply. He reached into the inside pocket of his coat and pulled out a simple, elegant business card. My name is Arthur Harrison. I took the card. The name didn't mean anything to me at first. Underneath it, it said, CEO Harrison Industries, and below that, Chairman, the Eleanor Harrison Foundation. My breath caught in my throat. Harrison Industries was one of the biggest tech firms in the city. I'd seen the name on a skyscraper downtown. This wasn't just a kind, well-off man. This was the Arthur Harrison, a millionaire, a billionaire for all I knew. He must have seen the shock on my face. Don't let the title fool you, he said with a wry smile. I'm just a man who misses his wife. After she passed, I started a foundation in her name. Its purpose is simple, to help the people she admired most. Nurses. We help with things like student loan relief, continuing education grants, and emergency car repairs. I stared at him, then down at the card, then back at him. It felt like I was in a dream. This couldn't be real. I want you to call my assistant tomorrow, he said, his tone shifting from gentle confidant to decisive CEO. Her name is Maria. I'll let her know you'll be calling. We're going to get your car situation figured out, and we're going to look at your student loans, and we are going to talk about that pediatric oncology program. I was speechless. My mind was a whirlwind of disbelief and a fragile, terrifying hope. I can't, I stammered. I can't accept that. It's too much. Nonsense, he said, his voice firm but kind. Eleanor would be furious with me if I drove away and did nothing. She always said that the world is saved not by grand gestures, but by people helping the person right in front of them. Tonight, you were the person in front of me. Please, let me do this. Let us do this. For Eleanor. The way he said her name, with so much love and loss, made it impossible to refuse. It didn't feel like charity. It felt like an honor. Okay, I whispered, clutching the business card so tightly the corner dug into my palm. Okay. he repeated, with a nod. Get inside and get some rest, Sarah. You've earned it. I got out of the car and walked to my apartment door on legs that felt like jelly. I watched as the sleek black sedan pulled away and disappeared into the night. Standing in my freezing hallway, I looked down at the card in my hand. Arthur Harrison. It was real. That night, I didn't eat cereal for dinner. I made myself a proper meal. I took the longest, hottest shower of my life. And when I went to sleep, for the first time in a very long time, I didn't dream of falling. I dreamt of flying. The next morning, I woke up with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. What if it was all a dream? What if I called and his assistant had no idea who I was? What if it was some kind of cruel joke? It took me 3 hours and 4 cups of coffee to work up the nerve. My hand was shaking as I dialed the number on the card. Mr. Harrison's office. This is Maria speaking. The voice was crisp and professional. Ah, hello, I stammered. My name is Sarah. Mr. Harrison, he gave me this number. He said I should call you. I cringed at how uncertain I sounded. There was a pause, and my heart sank. He forgot. It was just a fleeting moment of pity. But then, Maria's voice returned, and it was warm, infused with a genuine kindness. Sarah. Yes, of course. Mr. Harrison told me all about you. He said you were a remarkable young woman. How are you this morning? Did you thaw out? The relief was so sudden and so total that I had to sit down. Yes, thank you. I'm fine. Good, she said. Now, Mr. Harrison left me with a few instructions. First, about your car. We have an account with the National Auto Shop. Just have the tow truck take it to the one on Clark Street. Tell them to send the bill to the Eleanor Harrison Foundation. They'll take care of you. We'd prefer to get it fixed, if possible, but if it's truly a goner, we'll handle that too. Mr. Harrison was very specific that you need reliable transportation. I was scribbling notes on the back of an envelope, my mind reeling. Second, she continued, I've emailed you an application packet for our foundation's nursing support program. It looks long, but it's mostly for our records. It covers student loan assistance and our education grants. Fill it out when you can, and send it back to me. No rush. And third, Mr. Harrison would like to have coffee with you next week, if you're free, to discuss the pediatric oncology program at Northwestern. He has a contact in the admissions department. By the time I hung up the phone, my life had fundamentally split into 2 distinct periods. Before the bus stop, and after the bus stop. Over the next few weeks, things changed with a speed that was dizzying. My poor old tin can was, indeed, declared a lost cause. The foundation didn't just give me money for a new one. They connected me with a reputable dealer and co-signed for a safe, reliable 3-year-old Honda. The first time I drove it to work, I cried. They were happy tears. I filled out the application packet, and a few weeks later, I received a letter. The Eleanor Harrison Foundation had awarded me a grant that would pay off more than half of my student loan debt and set up a manageable interest-free payment plan for the rest. The weight that lifted off my shoulders was a physical sensation. I felt taller. I could breathe again. My coffee meeting with Arthur, he insisted I call him Arthur, wasn't intimidating at all. We met at a small cafe, and he was just a man who loved his wife and wanted to honor her memory. He talked about Eleanor's passion for nursing, her belief in education. He listened as I talked about my dreams. He didn't just offer help. He offered mentorship. He became a guiding force in my life, a father figure I never knew I needed. True to his word, he put me in touch with the admissions department at Northwestern. With the foundation's backing and Arthur's letter of recommendation, I was accepted into their highly competitive pediatric oncology specialty program. It's been 2 years since that freezing night at the bus stop. My life is unrecognizable. I'm no longer just surviving. I'm thriving. I finished my specialization last spring. I still work at St. Jude's, but now I'm on the pediatric floor. I work with children fighting battles no child should ever have to face. It's the hardest work I've ever done, and I love every single minute of it. I get to be the kind of nurse my mom had, the kind of nurse Eleanor was, the kind of nurse I always wanted to be. The cost of caring is still there. Some days are heartbreaking, but now I have the resources and the emotional stability to bear it. I can afford to go home and see my mom every month. The foundation's grant took so much pressure off our family that her health has actually improved with the decrease in stress. I have coffee with Arthur every few months. We talk about my work, his foundation. I tell him stories about the kids on my floor, the small victories, the funny things they say. I know that through my stories, he gets to feel a little closer to Eleanor. And through him, I feel a connection to the legacy of a woman I never met, but whose spirit has completely reshaped my world. Last winter, I was leaving the hospital after another long shift. It was snowing, big, fat, lazy flakes that covered the city in a blanket of white. As I walked to my car, I saw one of the cleaning staff, a woman named Rosa, huddled at that same bus stop. She was shivering, her coat far too thin for the weather. I stopped. I could have just driven home. I was tired. But I thought of Arthur, of Eleanor, of the warmth of that car on that cold, dark night. The world is saved by people helping the person right in front of them. I pulled my car over to the curb. I rolled down the window. Rosa, I called out. She looked up, surprised. It's a bad night to wait for a bus, I said, a smile on my face. Can I give you a ride home? Her eyes filled with relief and gratitude. As she got into the warm passenger seat, I felt a profound sense of rightness, of a circle being completed. A single moment of kindness hadn't just changed my life. It had taught me how to change someone else's. And that, I realized, was the greatest gift of all.